remember the way the candlelight danced across the marble countertop that night. Flickering, uncertain, like it already knew what I didn't. I'd just finished arranging the cutlery when I heard Daniel's voice echoing softly from the living room. At first, I wasn't listening. His work calls often blurred into the hum of our evenings, half-heard phrases about projections and mergers and someone named Greg who was always late. But this time, my name didn't come up. That was the first silence I noticed. Langy. See you all at 7. Yes. Marcus, Jenna, Eleanor, Philip. Yeah, no, it'll just be us. More relaxed that way. Us? I stood there, towel still damp in my hands, heart thudding a little too fast for no good reason. Just colleagues, I told myself. Maybe something spontaneous. Still, I walked quietly over to the kitchen tablet and tapped open the shared calendar. There. It was. Daniel's birthday dinner, 7:00 p.m., Le Jardin Noir, private room reserved. The reservation had been made a week ago. By him. Under his name. No mention to me. My thumb hovered above the screen. I scrolled up, then down, trying to find a note, an invite, something. Nothing. A strange tightness coiled in my chest. I walked, back to the counter, steadied myself against it. The scent of rosemary chicken curled up from the stovetop. I'd made his favorite. A habit, I guess. I even lit the expensive taper candles, the ones I saved for our dinners. The ones he said made things feel like home. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. March 15th, last year, I'm wearing the red wrap dress he used to love. We're at the same restaurant. I'm toasting with him, laughing at something I've long forgotten. His hand is on the small of my back. I look, full, of something I can't name anymore. There's another photo. The wristwatch I gave him, still in its velvet box. He'd kissed my forehead that night, whispered, "You know me better than anyone." Apparently not anymore. I heard him laugh from the living room. A casual, unbothered sound. I walked in, trying not to shake. "Daniel," he glanced up from his phone. "Yeah?" I saw the reservation. His fingers paused mid-scroll. "What reservation?" I nodded toward the tablet. Le Jardin Noir, tonight. Your birthday dinner. He didn't even look embarrassed. "Oh, that. It's just some coworkers. Very last minute." "A week ago is last minute?" My voice cracked. "At the edges." He sighed, irritated. "Claire, it's a work thing. You wouldn't really fit in with that group." That sentence, that precise collection of words, sliced through me so fast it took a moment to bleed. You wouldn't fit in. Like I was furniture that didn't match the decor. I stared at him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask who Elena was. I'd seen that name pop up once too often on his notifications. I wanted to demand why he smelled like vanilla and musk when I hadn't worn that perfume in months. But I didn't. I just nodded. Something inside me slid into place. Not peace exactly. Not rage either. Something colder. Sharper. I walked back to the kitchen, sat down at my laptop. The password still had both our initials in it. CND03. I opened the restaurant's website, pulled up the reservation, canceled. No note, no call. Just delete, like a photo you don't want to explain. He didn't say anything. Maybe he didn't notice, or maybe he just didn't care. An hour later, I placed the birthday cake on the dining table, a chocolate espresso torte with gold dusting. I'd pre-ordered it weeks ago. His favorite. I lit the candles. Not because I believed he'd come, but because I needed to see them burn. I sat there, alone, in the too big dining room of the too cold house we built together. The cake began to sweat under the heat. The flames flickered, struggling for oxygen. And I just watched until they died. I used to paint women with wings, sometimes broken, sometimes outstretched, always reaching. That was before Daniel, before the muted grays and carefully folded towels and sleek, scentless candles that now defined our home. We met at a tech conference in San Francisco. I was there to photograph a small panel for a friend. He was the keynote, confident in a charcoal blazer, holding a room like he'd been born for spotlights. I remember how his voice cut through the ambient chatter, how his gaze lingered, a second too long on mine after his speech. He called me refreshing, said I didn't orbit like the others. I had my own axis. I was too flattered to see the foreshadowing. We moved in together 8 months later. He told me, "Don't worry, baby. Keep painting. I'll handle the rest." I believed him. For a while, I did keep painting. The first few canvases hung in the hallway of our new condo. I used to catch him standing in front of one, wine glass, in hand, eyes distant. But then came the little remarks. "This one's a bit intense, don't you think?" Or, "I think it's time we redecorated, make it more modern." So the art came down, replaced by mass-produced prints in black frames. Then there was the exhibit, my first solo gallery invitation. A week before the opening, Daniel asked me to accompany him to a black tie gala for his firm. "It'll mean a lot. You'll have more exhibits, but this one's important." I canceled the exhibit, smiled through the gala, listened to him talk about market share while I sipped champagne that burned going down. One by one, my weekends disappeared into errands, into folding laundry while he practiced presentations aloud, into playing hostess to his clients. My world shrank. From color to grayscale. From canvases to calendar invites. My brushes dried out in jars. My sketchbook stayed zipped up, untouched. Even my phone calls with Mom became shorter. Daniel would pace if I stayed on too long. "You talk to her every week. You can miss one." So I did. Then another. She passed away before I ever remembered to call her back. My best friend Jules was the only one who ever said it out loud. We were drinking coffee in her cramped little kitchen, surrounded by clutter and life. She said, "You love him, but do you still love yourself?" I laughed, deflected. Of course I did. I had love. I had a partner. I had a beautiful apartment and matching dishes. Now I realize I didn't have myself. Daniel loved the idea of me. The bohemian woman with splattered jeans and opinions he could polish. I was his project. And slowly, I let him sculpt me into something I didn't recognize. I wasn't abused. Not in the way people think. No bruises, no slamming doors, just silences, dismissals, absences. And that was the hardest part. Trying to explain the erosion of a soul in a house that looked like a Pinterest board. Tonight, after canceling the dinner and sitting with that untouched cake, I climbed up into the attic. I hadn't been up there in years. It smelled like dust and something else. Something older. Regret, maybe. I found it behind a broken easel and a suitcase we never unpacked from a trip we never took. The painting. It was a self-portrait, abstract, but unmistakably me. Wild hair, hands raised, colors exploding behind me. I'd titled it Becoming. It was the last piece I painted before. Moving in with him, the canvas was cracked along the edges. Dust coated the corners like grief. I sat cross-legged on the wooden floor and stared at it for a long time. It hit me then. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was grieving. Grieving a woman I used to know. A woman who painted wings. A woman who filled rooms with light. A woman I hadn't spoken to in years. But she was still there. Faded, yes. But waiting. It was raining the day I truly broke. Not a dramatic storm. just the kind of soft, relentless rain that seeps into everything. That seeps through you. I was folding Daniel's shirts in the laundry room, smoothing out the collar of the pale blue one he wore to his meetings with investors. The smell of detergent mixed with something else, faint but unmistakable. That perfume again. Not mine. Not anything I owned. Vanilla with some kind of floral base. Warm, expensive, lingering. I pressed the shirt to my face, and for a second I couldn't breathe. A door opened. Daniel's voice called out, casual, upbeat. "Hey, babe. Crazy day." He rushed, past the laundry room without waiting for a response, left a trail of damp footprints on the hardwood. I heard the water start in the shower. He was humming. Actually humming. I walked slowly to the foyer, where he'd dropped his gym bag. His phone sat half buried under a towel, screen glowing with a recent message. I didn't plan to touch it. I really didn't. But something in me, something tired and quietly desperate, reached for it. The passcode hadn't changed. It opened into a world I didn't recognize. Photos of champagne glasses clinking, her hand on his. A smiling brunette, in a silk blouse, blurred in motion, the kind of woman who looked effortlessly desired. And the texts. Elena. Still dreaming about last night. Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. Daniel. You always make me feel like the king I am. My mouth went dry. I didn't scream, didn't throw the phone, didn't even cry. I set it down like it was something sacred, fragile, foreign. A relic of a truth I hadn't been allowed to hold until now. Everything unraveled after that. Not with noise, but with silence. I moved like a ghost through the rest of the day, folding, cleaning, cooking a dinner I didn't eat. I watched the pasta boil until it bubbled over, scalding the stove. I didn't clean it. I caught my reflection in the microwave door, sunken eyes, hair in a limp knot, the outline of someone familiar, someone gone. That night, I sat on the floor of the closet and pulled out my old journals. Pages of bright ink and hopeful sketches. I flipped through them like a stranger reading a dead woman's diary. I wrote in a blank one. Who are you now? Don't disappear. You used to fly. I found my old phone, the one I hadn't touched in years. The battery had just enough charge. There was one voicemail, saved. From my mother. Her voice was warm, teasing, crackling just a little. Don't lose your light. Baby girl, not for anyone. Call me back, okay? She died 3 winters ago. I'd never called her back. That message cracked something open, not all at once. More like a hairline fracture that suddenly widened until it split me in two. I packed a bag, a few clothes, 1 pair of boots, my sketchbook, the ring. I took it off and dropped it into a zippered pouch, like something dead I couldn't bury yet. I wrote Daniel a note. 5 words. I need space. Don't call. I left it on the kitchen counter next to his favorite mug, the one that said World's Smartest CEO, and walked out. The rain was still falling. My breath fogged the windshield. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew it couldn't be here. I crossed the bridge out of the city. Didn't look back. The ring lay on the dashboard. Silver, smooth, catching slivers of moonlight like a wound that refused to heal. And I drove. The cabin didn't have Wi-Fi. That's what sold me on it. It sat on the edge of a lake so still, it looked like glass. The kind of place people came to forget or to remember. I wasn't sure which I needed more. It took 2 tanks of gas and 3 breakdowns on the side of the road, none mechanical, to get there. The first night, I didn't sleep. The silence was too loud. Every creak of the old wood felt like a memory trying to claw its way back in. I wrapped myself in a wool blanket and sat in front of the stone fireplace, watching the flames. My journal lay open on the coffee table. I'd written only one thing: I exist. The next morning, I walked barefoot onto the dock. The boards were weathered and slick with mist. I let the fog wrap around me like a second skin. It smelled of pine and damp earth and morning. I breathed it in like medicine. Days passed. The first canvas I touched bled rage, thick black strokes slashing across white like wounds. I didn't try to make it pretty. I just made it. And then another, and another color returned in bursts: scarlet, ochre, cobalt, like my insides remembering how to feel. I began sketching symbols: a cracked ring, a dress in flames, a faceless woman walking into the sea. They made no sense, but they made me. I ate simple food, read old books, took long walks without my phone. The ache in my chest didn't vanish. It just learned how to sit beside me instead of inside me. One evening, I wandered into the nearest town, a sleepy, wood-smoked place called Halebridge. I found a small bookstore tucked between a bakery and a thrift shop. Inside, it smelled like cedar and ink. That's where I met Marla. She was maybe 60, with silver-streaked braids and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. She looked up from her counter and smiled like she already knew my story. Looking for a book or just a place to breathe? I laughed, then cried. Right there in the poetry aisle. She made me tea in the back and didn't ask why. Just poured, and listened as I unraveled, slowly, gently, like yarn across old hardwood. Over the next few weeks, we built a quiet routine. I'd stop by the store in the afternoons, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to sit with the women who gathered near the fireplace with cups of tea and histories folded into their palms. They didn't speak in clichés. They didn't need to. They'd lived it. The gaslighting, the erasure, the long, slow bleeding of identity. They nodded when I said, "He never hit me," like they already understood that bruises on the soul were harder to explain. I told Marla about Daniel's old gifts: the necklace, the silk scarf, the designer bag I never asked for. She just said, "Give them somewhere they'll matter." So I did. I drove to the nearest women's shelter and handed over the box with a note taped to the top. These came from a lie. Maybe they can help build someone else's truth. It rained the day I gave them away, but it felt like sunlight. Inside. Then one morning, Marla handed me a key. Old bronze, slightly rusted. "To the studio out back," she said. "It's been empty since my sister moved. Needs paint and patience. But I thought you might want it." I stared at the key like it was a lifeline. "I don't know if I'm ready," I said. She tilted her head. "Ready is a myth. Just show up." So I did. The studio smelled like dust and memory. The windows were foggy, the floor uneven. But the light, oh, the light, poured in from the skylight like forgiveness. I set up my easel, unpacked my brushes, and for the first time in years, I painted not because I was hurting, but because I was here. The piece that came out of me was soft, no fire, no fury, just air. A woman standing in the middle of a field, hands open, wind lifting her hair. The title came to me before the last stroke dried, The Exhale. I hung it on the back wall and stepped outside, the sun on my face. For the first time in a very long time, I felt something unfamiliar stir in my chest. It wasn't happiness. Not quite. It was something quieter. Something steadier. Whisper from deep inside. "You're still in here." I returned to the city in early spring. The air felt different this time. Sharper, clearer. Like it had been washed clean by something I couldn't see. Or maybe it was me who had changed. I didn't tell anyone I was back. Just slipped into the city like a breeze through a crack in the door. My hair was shorter now, a blunt chin-length cut that no longer curled like Daniel liked. My boots were worn from walking the lake trails, my hands stained with paint. But I carried myself differently, taller somehow. Not because I was proud, but because I was done folding. My first stop was his condo. I still had a key. He wasn't home. I didn't need long. The guest room closet held the things he never touched. Files, old laptops, boxes labeled with my handwriting. I found the USB drives tucked inside a leather organizer, exactly where I left them years ago. Back when I was still helping with his side projects, believing I was supporting the dream. I plugged the old laptop into the wall and waited for it to groan to life. It smelled like time. Within minutes, I had what I needed. Spreadsheets, wire transfers, shell invoices. The kind of thing you don't see until you're looking for it. I wasn't a financial expert, but I remembered enough. And the names on those transfers, some I recognized. A few were clients I'd heard him mention at dinner. Some were companies that no longer existed. And there it was, the Arcadia Fund. A dummy account I had helped set up for investor privacy. He'd used my name to authorize the creation of it. That alone made my stomach twist. I took screenshots, saved copies, labeled everything. I didn't feel angry. I felt precise, cold in the way steel feels cold, strong, intentional. I found Dana through one of Marla's contacts. She was a lawyer in her 40s, with calm eyes and a voice that didn't rush. She offered me tea the moment I walked into her office. "You're not the first woman who's walked in here with a USB full of secrets," she said gently. "But you might be the first who came carrying art too. Because I brought that too. Not just the files, but a sketchbook. I didn't know why. Maybe because it was all part of the same story." She listened, took notes, asked the right questions. And when I handed her the flash drive, she simply said, "Good. Let's get to work." Back at the cabin, I started to feel a shift. The pain was still there, but it no longer sat at the center of me. It had been moved, not buried, just placed, on a shelf, acknowledged, but no longer in control. I reopened my social media accounts, not for validation, but for connection. I uploaded a few pieces from the Lake series. No captions, just images. A faceless woman walking toward the edge of a forest. A torn photograph stitched back together with thread. A hand gripping a cracked mirror, the reflection unrecognizable. My inbox filled slowly. Messages from former collectors, curious artists, even a gallery owner in Portland who remembered me from back when you were going to be the next big thing. She invited me to exhibit. The theme I gave her was instinctual, the woman who was erased. Each piece would be a confession, a reclaiming, a truth that no longer needed permission. One afternoon I went shopping, not for revenge, not for vanity, but for armor. The scarlet dress was silk, sleeveless, simple. It didn't scream, it whispered. With power. When I tried it on, the woman in the mirror looked me in the eye. "You're still here." The days leading up to the gallery show passed in a blur of framing, titling, writing display cards. Each painting told a chapter. Silence over supper. A muted dining table with one place untouched. The birthday cake. That waited. Candles dripping, untouched. Becoming. The resurrected self-portrait from the attic, finally. Restored, and finally. The exhale. The only piece that felt like peace. In the corner of the gallery, I placed a list of invited guests, printed on parchment, framed in gold. One name was deliberately missing. but I sent him an invitation anyway. No RSVP necessary. He'd come. I knew he would. The night of the opening arrived with golden light spilling over the city skyline. I stood in the gallery before. The guests arrived, staring at the room that held pieces of me I'd once buried. Jules came. She brought roses and tears. She hugged me like someone who finally understood how much I'd survived. "You look like you again," she whispered. I smiled, not because I felt whole, but because I felt true. The doors opened. People drifted in, murmuring, studying, tilting their heads at the pain made visible on canvas. Some recognized themselves in the art, some just stared. And then I saw him, Daniel, in a navy blazer, clean-shaven, that old smug tilt to his jaw. But when he stepped into the light, something flickered in his eyes. He was expecting something else. He stopped at Silence Over Supper, read the placard, turned slowly. Then he saw the birthday cake that waited. His face stiffened. When he saw Becoming, his lips parted, and then the Arcadia Ledger, a piece I painted in sharp lines and financial figures, with my own name stamped across the bottom in ghostly print. He knew. I walked over, heels soft on the gallery floor. "Claire," he started. I held up a manila envelope. Inside, the case file, the documents, the notification of legal action. I handed it to him without a word. He stared at it. "What is this?" "My goodbye." My voice was calm. Colder than I expected. "I'm not here for drama, Daniel. I'm here because you made me invisible. And I want you to see what that cost you." He looked around. "This is public." "I know." I turned and walked away. As I did, the soft clapping of heels against concrete faded beneath the growing hum of the gallery. I stood in front of the exhale, a woman in wind, her face peaceful, her body whole. Someone asked me what it meant. I said simply, freedom. There's something strange about hearing your own life reflected in strangers' voices. Whispers, admiring hums, the occasional gasp. They didn't know the full story, not all of it. But they knew enough. They could feel it in the brushstrokes, in the muted pain hanging between the gallery walls like a second kind of air. My red dress moved softly with me as I walked the space, wine glass in hand, nodding to guests. It wasn't power I wore that night. It was presence. And for once, it belonged only to me. The gallery pulsed with warmth and light. People lingered at each canvas, taking their time. Some asked about my process. Others stayed silent, studying, the way I'd laid grief in layers. And then I saw him. Daniel. He stepped through the doors as if he still believed the room belonged to him. Tailored suit, impeccable shoes. That same confident stride, the one that once made me feel safe, then small, then invisible. He spotted me across the room, and I watched the corner of his mouth twitch upward. A performance smile. It faded fast. He hadn't seen them yet. The paintings. He started at the far wall. Silence Over Supper. Muted tones. A chair left empty. A candle half burned out. Then, the birthday without a wife. A single cake. No one at the table. Her shadow on the wall. Forgotten. I watched his shoulders stiffen. And then came the Arcadia Ledger, the one I painted in icy grays and numerical chaos, lines intersecting like prison bars. In the corner, my signature, and beneath it, faintly scratched into the canvas. Her name was on every lie. He turned, his face pale now, jaw tight. He pushed through the crowd, stopping inches from me. "Claire, we need to talk." I held up the envelope before he could speak again. Cream-colored, sealed, his name printed neatly on the front. "What is this?" he asked, voice low. "Everything you erased," I said. "All documented, all signed, including the divorce papers." He glanced around, noticed the stares now, the people who once admired him suddenly watching with measured curiosity. Some of them were his colleagues. A few were at that birthday dinner, the one where I was left out. He leaned in, his voice sharp. "You're humiliating yourself." I smiled, not with joy, but with peace. "I'm not here to humiliate you, Daniel. This was never about revenge. This was about remembering who I was before you forgot me." His eyes darted across the room again, scanning the walls, the titles, the way people whispered when they looked at him now. He opened the envelope, scanned the first page, and paled. "You can't do this." "I already did." He looked as if he might argue. Then something shifted in him. Resignation, maybe. Or fear. He turned to go. I didn't follow. I stayed until the last guest left. Jules helped me pack the wine glasses and flowers. She didn't say much, just gave me a long hug at the end and whispered, "I'm proud of you." Later that night, I walked up to the rooftop of my new studio, the space Marla helped me claim. The city below glowed in soft oranges and golds, the hum of distant traffic like a lullaby. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the edge of the rooftop, the breeze warm against my skin. Beside me sat a fresh canvas, blank, waiting. I didn't know what I would paint next. And for the first time in years, I was okay with that. The ring I once wore rested inside a glass jar on the windowsill behind me, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder of what I carried, of what I let go. I looked out at the horizon, the sky darkening into lavender and ink. Somewhere, far away, he was reading that envelope, seeing the pieces of himself he tried to hide, reflected through me, immortalized in pigment and truth. But I didn't think about him anymore. Not really. I closed my eyes. Let the wind lift my hair. Let the city breathe around me. And I smiled. Not because I won, not because he lost, but because I came back to myself. And this time, I knew I would never leave her behind again.